Okay then. Well, welcome everyone. So if you haven't been to one of these before, a quick preamble. As usually, I think everyone's been to a webinar. Pop questions in the chat. We do want them. Put them at any time. We won't necessarily, you don't have to hold them till the end. And then me or Gavin will pick them up. So the most important for us is to make this relevant for you. So if you've got a particular question that's come up when you've been in the platform, or you're really new to it and you're just not sure where you would need to find things, please ask as we go along. But the kind of idea of today's session is to get you to understand a little bit more about how you can use the insight tools within the platform to be able to improve your bot performance. So for those of you that know and have worked with Gav, you'll know that he does this with you. So generally when you have your CS meetings, you'll be sort of presented with some options and some suggestions for improvements based on what we can see. But we want to give you the tools to be able to do that outside of those sessions. Right. So as I said, sorry, there's a cat. You can that will be in the webinar recording, unfortunately. There we go.
I think it would be wrong to try and edit out the cat.
I should just put them on this screen really as like co-presenters next time. Okay, so we've split it up into some separate sections because we want to make this as relevant as we can for you. So I'm going to start with some benchmarks so you understand, what is good, what is not good. So you can understand how you're performing against others. So you do have some goals to reach. Then we're going to go through, I suppose, at a bot level, individual bot level, the heat map, which is our favorite, really impactful tool. Then a little bit like higher level, so the kind of understand the account level bot insights, and an example. So we want to give you all the theory of where you need to look for things, but also a client example and exactly what we did and what changed to make an impact on the results. And then I guess we're going to show you a little bit more of the bot insights which has just been launched in its new version, I think, in the last month. We're excited about it, and we want to show you what actually makes it more impactful. We're good to go. I will hand over to you to talk through the benchmarks.
Great. Yeah, let me, after giving you grief about not having your screen ready, I didn't have mine. Yeah, so exactly. We're going to be chatting about the insights today, and we wanted to start with a few benchmarks just to give you an idea of what other customers are experiencing, what sort of industry averages are. Obviously, caveat that with every business is different, and everyone's engagement rate and conversion rates will be slightly different, and your goals will be slightly different. But I suppose it's more just to get an idea of like, are you getting the most out of the bots? Just to sort of see where you are in that league table, if you like, for Leadoo. So on the right hand side of this screen, you'll see the gauge, which hopefully you'll have seen from the main dashboard when you log in. So I suppose just to give a bit of context, the two things we're looking at here is passive visitors engaged, which is triggered to discussion, which is basically like the engagement rate. So how many people actually start a conversation whenever they see the bots. And then the other one is triggered to lead. So that's how many people convert once they have actually seen a bot. So I suppose triggers, most of you will know this already, but triggers are almost like impressions in that most of the bots will load when the page loads, especially the in-page and the visual bots. Chatbots don't always load when the page loads. Sometimes they're timed to open after a certain few seconds, or percentage scroll, for example, or sometimes set to not open at all if you don't want them to be too intrusive. So just a bit of context why though maybe those numbers wouldn't be exactly like impressions. But we have put some benchmarks beside them, and you'll see at the bottom there's a link for the conversion crunch. So these numbers are gathered after we've sort of researched about 800 or so customers across lots of different markets, lots of different industries, to get an idea of sort of industry averages and how we've been able to impact those ones. So you can, that's a link that you can download that and sort of review that as well. There's some great screenshots and bot examples in there as well that might also give you some ideas. But basically anywhere between 10 and 12% as an engagement rate is very good. And then for the conversion rate, we're looking at 1.5 to 2% sort of like as a strong benchmark. Obviously, the higher the better. And then the final one, which we don't have a screenshot for because it's not in this part of the platform, it's in the second part, but we'll look at that, is the discussion to lead rate. So this is a very important one because it's basically how many people actually convert once they start a conversation. So once they're sort of in the front door, how many people go on to turn into a lead. And you'll see from the few of the slides that we've got in a second, so 15% and up for this one is really, really good. And so I'm just going to skip on to this. So these are a few screenshots from the conversion crunch. You can obviously, Helen put the link in there, which is great, so you can get access to that. But basically, the trigger to engagement then is this is it across all the different sectors that we work with, and you can see there that there's sort of high peaks of 7.5, and there's some sort of just over sort of 2.5, 3 there for real estate, etc. So just to give you an idea of maybe what you could be expecting, and maybe you're maybe not getting the most out of your current bots, or you're maybe thinking about revamping them. Maybe you've had an update to the website. Sort of just to give you an idea of where you could be at. And then the next slide is that engagement to lead one that we just mentioned. So this is once people are in, how many of those actually convert. So this is a real good one to pay attention to. And again, sort of the average there is sort of 15 and above. Obviously over 20 is great, and then above that is fantastic. So just to sort of, before we get into the insights and where you find them and how you use them, just I suppose just to get an idea of where you're sort of sitting at in the current sort of in the sort of current benchmarks. And so with that, unless if there's any questions, obviously fire them in, but I'll hand over to Helen now, who's going to talk about the heat map.
Yes, indeed. So this is one of the, I would say, the easiest tools to use in Leadoo that can have an impact on your bot. So one of the things that we do during onboarding is we try to create journeys based on our best guess through the conversations that we have with you about the pain points, the friction points, what we need to get out of the conversation. But this is where we can actually find out what actually works, where are the drop-off points. So we can have an idea of, the interactions that are happening. So how many people are clicking which button. You can see this, and I will show you in a minute. It's kind of a traffic light system, so we can actually see, where are the problems. And so we can then fix them. And with that, I won't tell you any more in theory, but let's see it. Okay. So this is a bot from our website. So this is real data. And you can see straight away, if I zoom out, there is kind of that traffic light, that heat map of where things are happening, what is good, which is green, what is not good, which is red. On in-page bots, it's not surprising to see like a high drop-off point on that first node because it loads for anyone that scrolls past it. We're going to get a high number of triggers or views, impressions that don't necessarily get engagement. So this isn't unexpected. But saying that, it's not to say that we can't improve it. So we do see a higher drop-off rate on that first node on in-page bot, but it also helps us understand maybe we need to improve it. We'll come to later, and in our client example, we'll give some examples of how we go about changing those first nodes, but I'll focus on the rest of it for now. So you can see, other than that, there's a couple that, especially on I want more leads and sales, which is like our top one, is that actually the route then goes through quite green. So we're looking pretty good all the way through. But you can see then we sort of get to an orange point here. So this is where we're already seeing a little bit of a drop off. So you can see that within a minute, we've already been identifying what is dropped off. The question is, next, what do you do? But Gavin will give us some examples later about what options you have. Some of them are going to be obvious. Like maybe it feels like we're presenting forms too quickly to them. Maybe we're not giving enough value in that journey, or maybe we're just kind of putting that hard call to action too soon. So there's some things that you can take as very knowledgeable marketeers to be able to improve it. The other thing I want to highlight in here, if I zoom in, is these numbers. So what I've done at the top here, so optimization mode switches on the heat map. Analytics turns on kind of those figures on the buttons. So this is where we can drill down really far on understanding what people are actually clicking on. So again, that helps us optimize it. So if we're seeing a really low number of options or people selecting that option, let's get rid of it. Sorry, as I've learned before, I'm very hands. Like I do a lot of hands in my calls, so I get these reactions. But yeah, so this not only helps us optimize it, but we could learn from this later as well and say, right, okay, we can add labels to these and understand which options people are selecting across all of our bots and optimize or learn from there. Any questions from the audience about heat maps? Have you used heat maps? Is there anything that you would like us to answer on them? Please pop it in the chat. Or of course, Gavin, if there's anything in particular that I've not highlighted that you typically go through with clients.
Not so much that. You did a great job of covering that. It's more just a question, and this is not something that we prepared, so apologies if this is out there. But on the right-hand side, we've got the gauge where we can set the 90%, 60%, 10%. Now, whenever we're in CS, we never touch this. We very, clients don't want to touch this. Is that something in onboarding that is or it gets mentioned at that sort of early phase? Obviously, we could set it to different benchmarks for different clients' needs and goals, but is it something that comes up much?
It doesn't at that stage. And I think it's because we're looking at those kind of higher level numbers, and probably you're the same, especially in the early relationship. We're looking at kind of what are the big things that we're aiming towards. So it's not something I typically change, but I think the default settings are pretty accurate. But it's a good thing to mention that this is movable. So if you do have more in-depth data about drop-offs, page drop-offs, if you've been using some kind of Hotjar tool, then maybe you can sync it up with that.
Nice.
All right. I'm just thinking, next bit is also me. So from the heat map, so this is kind of like right at the bot level, but we want to kind of zoom out, as it were, and look across the whole account. And that's where the bot insights comes into play. Again, this is what Gavin, Sophia, and Alex will be going through with you to say, okay, what's happening here based on what was it last time we met? What's going on? Generally, we're looking at some like top things, which is like the conversion rate from discussions. So how well are we, pushing people down the funnel from engagement to conversion? And also how many people are we actually getting to engage in the first place, where we can maybe influence that. And then just generally like compared to the website visitors. I will jump over into that. Ooh, bear with me. Just wait for this to load. So if you haven't been in here recently, this does look a bit different, and we will go back into it in a minute just to kind of highlight exactly what has changed. But what is quite similar is this view at the top, which is about the kind of different bot types. So when we do your onboarding, as you'll know, we'll try and put together chat bots, in-page bots, and visual bots for you and launch these on your site. Because we know this kind of hybrid mixed approach is the best way to kind of get impact with your customers, but also not feel like they're having a repetitive journey. And it allows us to test what people most respond to. So on our site, we are very kind of in-page bot heavy. So you can see that that's why, most of our triggers are coming from in-page and visual. But we do find that, especially in B2B, chatbot can still perform really well. So definitely not one to be ignored. And we would always say that's kind of a must-have. And then we use the in-page bots and visual bots in more of a kind of dynamic way across the website. But here is when you can see, the numbers up front. So we can see how many discussions are happening in engagements. We can see what the conversion rate in discussions are. So how well are we actually engaging with people? But crucially, which is probably for us the most exciting thing, especially if you're a data nerd, is being able to compare it to the previous period. Numbers are great, but unless you know what that really means, then it's hard to make decisions from it. So just this alone allows us to kind of pinpoint, is it performing better or worse than it did before? And it'll always be compared to the last period that you've got selected. So I've just got 1 month, but you can change this to whatever date range makes sense for you if you're looking over a longer period or not. I'll scoot down a little bit because the other section I really like to highlight is the labels. So as I mentioned before, we can add labels to the options within the bots. And typically you will have already had these set up by your onboarding manager to track things like calls to action people are selecting. Maybe it's the industry, product and service type they're interested in. All of those can be used for other purposes within the account. But here we can track the use of them across all of the bots. So as you can see, as standard, it's just like everything in one bucket. And with the old insights, there was no way to really filter this very easily. Now there is. So you can go down and say, right, I only want to see the labels from this group. It's going to automatically update this. If I select an active group, it would help. Let's try a couple of these. Oh, okay. I'm getting bad luck here. Let's just go back to all labels. So depending on the groups that you have set up, then you can view it like that. And the one that I would say that I would most want to use is like the ones I suggested. So if you do want to understand what calls to action are promoting engagement, filter it by that. Then we can change the buttons that we're using in the bots, or even just learn which ones are working the most. Because what we do find is the buttons that say like, I have a question, which seems very low intent potentially, but what it has done is generated a conversion and started a conversation with that prospect. Or if it is just learning, you know, okay, I'm doing these campaigns, am I actually getting the traffic through that I want to? If you've got a range of audiences that you talk to, especially if they're very varied, such as with our training clients where we have the learners and the employers. So maybe you just want to easily understand, are you getting the traffic from the audience that you really need? For the rest of it, I'm actually going to hand back over to Gavin because I think he probably does a better job of explaining the rest of this because you're looking at it when the data is there and you've done a few months in. So I'll hand back to you for that.
Yeah, I have the advantage of coming in with a lot of data. Yeah, because in the onboarding, obviously, you'll just be using ours to highlight what they can do. And yeah, I mean, part of our role as CSMs is you know the optimization calls, so whether that's monthly or quarterly, and you know going back to these figures beside it to say if it's gone up or down has been an absolute godsend. You know, it's used to take quite a lot of time to do the reviews and to do the prep, but even from a customer point of view, you know, this is really powerful for them to be able to just go in and sort of analyze it on their own. And what we most look at in these phases, let me just zoom in a wee tiny bit.
Yeah. Do you want to? I think you're still on me actually. Do you want to switch over?
Yeah. Just here we go. Yeah. So what we tend to do on those calls is look for the sort of the weak areas and where can we make the most impact quickly. So obviously there will be some proactive work in terms of, you know, if we know that campaigns are coming up, we'll put different things in place. But there is a lot of reactivity to this because, especially if we're running A/B tests, we want to be able to see what's working. And, you know, we all know that every customer's visitor is slightly different, and what works for one is not guaranteed to work for another. So where we can really make sort of noticeable difference is in these two areas. So the conversion rate from the discussion and the engagement rate. So the conversion rate from the discussion is really, as I said, like that's people who convert once they've started a conversation. And if this is low, that's a real indication that there's something wrong in the inner workings of the bot. Now that might be, as Helen said, we've put the form too early, or we've asked like 6 form fields instead of being more conversational to say, you know, what's your first name? Oh, great. Can I have an email to share the results with you, etc. Or maybe we ask their pain points first, so they're more bought in. So the psychology of that is that if they've given you a few answers like, oh, I'm looking to increase leads, or, you know, we're looking to spend money in Google Ads this month, or they've already started that conversation, they're then more likely to go ahead and leave their contact details. Rather, if you said, you know, I need a price or get a demo, and we ask for the form first before doing that sort of bit of discovery, it's very off-putting because there's no value there for the visitor. They just see it as a sort of data grab, and it's a bit off-putting. So those are the sort of things that we can definitely look to impact. And same idea with the engagement rate, because it's really about how many people can we get in conversations with the bots. And we'll see from the examples that we're going to show now that we've been able to do that with some clients. This one is definitely one that we can make quick wins with, because it's just a real case of seeing how many people are actually clicking on the bots, how many people are interacting with them. Now, there will be traffic will play a part in this, as Helen said. Like, if we're sending the right traffic to the website, then it makes it a bit easier. But it's also just about, well, what options are we putting in front of people? Are we doing feature-led starting points, or are we doing more sort of pain point focus, so people are able to sort of share what sort of challenges they're having? So those sort of things are sort of aspects that we can change to increase that engagement. And whenever we're looking at tests, I mean, it can be very simple things like we do a male versus female face, we do red versus blue colors, obviously depending on your branding. There's lots of different ways we can A/B test. And basically, if we can get this right and this right, I'm sorry if you can hear drills there. I've got a plumber working in the house at the minute. If we can get those two right, the conversion rate from the trigger will fall into place. So this would be sort of indirectly affected by these two, if you know what I mean. So if you could focus on these two, that would be the main takeaway from this, I would say. And so how we go ahead.
I was going to say, there's nothing you can say about our webinars being real. We've got pets, we've got drilling. It's just.
Is it really loud? No, not too bad.
A little bit.
Oh, is it?
Fine.
Okay.
Carry on.
He won't be long. So what we would do in these optimization calls is, now that we've got the percentage beside it, we can really quickly see like which ones are underperforming, so we can make those steps. So for example, as Helen said, the in-page bots are getting a lot of activity. We've had 12% more triggers in that case, but it hasn't correlated into more leads. And so the reason behind that is clearly we're not getting enough engagement with it. More people are seeing it, but less people are actually interacting with it. Now, then we can come down to the bottom to get a full list of the bots, and we can toggle this onto in-page, for example. And then we can go, well, which one specifically is the problem child here, really? Now, we've been doing a lot of recruitment recently, so it is that focus. But I mean, for you guys, it could be, it's maybe on one of your services pages, or a pricing page, or content download page. It could be anything. But you can see very quickly that it's this one here which is underperforming. And then what we would do is, we'll see, is it, how badly is it underperforming? And then we'll go to that bot specifically, as Helen showed, into the heat map and see, well, what are they not clicking on? Are they getting lots of clicks on one area? Do we need to remove an option? Do we need to add in another option? Maybe we're not giving them an easy way to convert, or we're not giving them a sort of nurturing option at the start to help pull them through in that first place. So like those are the sort of main things, but that we would look at for the conversions. And I think this maybe ties us on nicely to the client example, unless we have any questions or examples. Oh, okay, good.
And this is probably, I missed this in my first section, is if you go back up to the top and just explain the compare bots tab.
Oh, yes, of course. So we used to have the compare bots tab, but it's definitely a lot more flexible now. The only thing is, I'll have to maybe go back and see which ones to compare, because we've got so many bots in here. It's ridiculous. So
yeah, I mean, we've had this account running since 2019, so there is a lot.
So whenever we talk about A/B testing, we have a designated place for A/B testing, but I suppose the one limitation to that is that it tests bot type versus bot type. So it can only test a in-page bot versus in-page, or visual versus visual, etc. You can't mix and match. And what we always try and stress to clients is that we're not sure how your clients or how your customers and visitors are going to respond to the different bot types, or what they feel more comfortable interacting with. So we want to try different things on different pages. And it might be that for 1 month we want to try an in-page bot, and then the next month we want to try a visual bot to see which one works better. So if you are doing those sort of tests, this compare bots area is great. So actually what I'll do is I'll just sort of pick a few, May 22. Let's see. That one, and let me give me another one there. Conversion expert. Oh, I hit the button too quickly. Okay, so what you can then end up with is you can compare and contrast really easily against those two bots over that time period. So if you were, as I said, like if you were trying to do two different things on the same page, but over a longer period of time, you could see, well, actually, whenever we look at the same amount of triggers, we can see which one has a better conversion rate from discussions and a better conversion rate from triggers. And we can also sort of gauge that that engagement rate between the trigger and discussion, and then we can get an idea of like how it's been performing over time, and then again the sort of labels that people are clicking on that side. So it's a full breakdown of those two bots in this page, but crucially it's a really good way of testing two different types of bots against each other.
Fantastic, thank you.
No problem. Obviously, ours is a wee bit of a mess because we've got so many different types of bots in there. I mean, it's more likely you would be testing, product page, in-page bot, product page, visual bot, and then you can get an idea. Well, actually, people like to engage more with the visual bot, but the conversion rate is higher on the end page, for example. And then you can decide how you're going to move, go forward. Okay, so let me jump back to the slides for 2 seconds, and then we'll show you as part of the real life examples. So we have a recent case study from this client, and obviously you can read that, but we're going to go through some of the things that has worked for them, and obviously we would like you to share any success stories you've had, and we could obviously share those as case studies as well. So if that's something you'd like to discuss, you can obviously let us know. But basically, this is an automotive client. They're called Ford of Winsford. They sell a wide range of used cars. They don't specialize as such in like any particular brand, which is one of the things that we'll talk about in a wee second. So that part of their challenge was they've got so many options on the site that they needed something to help people make the decision better and help them find the car that was right for them. So rather than focusing on like I want an Audi TT or I want a Ford Focus, it was more things like I need a family car, or I'm a first-time driver. What could you recommend? So it was more sort of lifestyle questions that people would be asking the bots rather than focusing on specific brands. And so whenever we first started with them, whenever they came over from onboarding, they had the standard sort of automotive setup that we do for everyone. And they had a few more options on the chatbot to start with. So like things like finance, like warranty, get a valuation, those sort of extra questions that they would have had. So there was probably 6 or 7 starting points here. And while it wasn't necessarily a case that they were unhappy with the level of engagement, but we just thought there's maybe an opportunity to try something new to see if we could increase that number. And so because we want to help sort of focus people's attention, we don't want to put too many options in front of them to create sort of decision paralysis where they couldn't decide what they needed to do. And for those people who are ready to book a visit, or they have a problem with their car, they can get their answer straight away. They don't need to sort of just faff around and see which one they need to go. We can hide all those other ones behind something else. So we're sort of targeting the main ICP first, and then the other people can click on this and then be nurtured through those sort of steps. And just by reducing those to 4 options, so it's more streamlined and more focused, that has increased the engagement with them by 2%. So 2% more of their visitors have started conversations with the bot. And then for automotive clients, generally the website traffic is huge. So any small gains for them is like massive in the sort of grand scheme of things. So just by doing that, that's really, really helped. We've stuck with that for quite a while. But again, that was quite an easy A/B test. We would just duplicate one bot and then add a something else option and hide all those other options behind that, and then just run the A/B test for a month and get the data to see which one worked. So quite simple to deploy. And then another option we've done. So I'm basically just going to fire through some of the optimizations that we've done with them, and hopefully it'll spark a few ideas for you. And if you have any specific scenarios you want to chat about, you can pop them in the chat there. So this next one is using the Leadoo website analytics. So I'm just going to go back into the platform 2 seconds. So again, like if you've not used this area much, this is another great one to get an idea of how people are using your website, how long they're spending on it. Do you have certain pages that get lots of traffic but gets very little conversions? What pages are sort of underperforming in that sense? And when we looked at the Fords of Winsford website, we noticed that they had a page for compare and a page for favorites. So people could obviously store their favorites there for a later date. We know people are very rarely buying the car on their first visit, and they'll have that compare one to sort of pick and choose. Maybe they've got 4 or 5 options sort of in the basket, in and around there. But those pages weren't converting. They didn't have any bots on them, and we sort of knew that the main chatbot wouldn't work there because it's too broad. It wouldn't have any value for the visitors. So what we've done is we've made it a much more focused and streamlined approach. Again, like it's really just drilling down onto trying to get those people to convert, because if they're on that page, presumably they are sort of in the market to buy a car. So it's very driven around that sort of reserve your car today. And then whenever we click on through, we're now focused on things like valuations. So get a valuation, apply for finance, rather than tell me about your financial options, book an appointment and reserve that. So very much strong CTAs around sort of trying to convert those returning visitors. And by having that on the site for them, since it was going live within a month, we'd had 65 leads through that. And then, so this is just some testing we've done on it to see different sort of trigger types to get an idea of which one was performing better. But again, this is sort of using the analytics and the insights from the visitor tracking area, and then applying that into the bot itself. So there was a gap that we noticed, because that page had a lot of traffic but very little conversions. So then let's see what we can do with that one. So it might be that there's a missed opportunity in some cases where we could sort of help a visitor, sort of on their journey a bit more. And then we've got one more. So this is quite a funny one because it's in direct contrast to what we did with the chatbot. So any automotive page, as you can see in this site, is full of call to actions. So we work with a lot of automotive clients, and these are called VDP pages. So these are the product pages themselves, and they're all quite similar in that there's lots of reserve for free, there's lots of apply for finance, etc., credit checks, delivery quote. There's quite a lot of strong calls to action on these pages. And while we did try that initially, to use the sort of same idea of reserve a car, ask a question, get in touch, we found that it was sort of in direct conflict with everything that was on the page, and it was being ignored because, I suppose, why would you go through the bot to do that whenever you could click on this button? Do you know what I mean? You've already seen it at the top. So it didn't really provide any value for the visitor. So we found the engagement rate was quite low on that. People were just not interacting with it. So, as I say, in direct contrast to the chatbot, what we've done is we've front loaded it with FAQs. So these are sort of things that we decided with the customer. So Ben there from Forza Windsor has been great with sort of helping us with the content and sort of suggestions. He spoke to the sales team and what people normally ask and what are some of the barriers to entry for people, etc. And so rather than trying to push for conversions than this, we're trying to answer some questions they might have. So it means that they don't have to go to an FAQ page. They don't have to go to like a warranty or a finance page to understand a wee bit more about their service. We can answer all those questions in the bot. Now, they have just moved to AI. So eventually this will be replaced by AI. But for now, these are all sort of predefined pathways. So we can go into questions like, what deposit do you need? So again, they can find out all this information without leaving the page. And then, yes, they can reserve it now, or, they've got the information they need. Maybe they want to use this button instead, or they want to have another look at the car, and then they convert. So just by having those FAQs at the start, we were able to jump their engagement rate from 2.4 to 5.5, just to get those people in the door and get them active. And this is the direct test that we had. So the VDP without FAQs versus the VDP with FAQs. So those have been rounded down and rounded up. That's why it's 2 and 6. But because we've had a higher engagement, we've got more people in the front door. We've got more leads. More or less the same amount of triggers, but an extra 32 leads. An extra 32 leads. No, that's not right. My maths is terrible. 28. I'll just keep guessing. So you can see what we've done there. Now, as I said at the start, this is there's a lot of trial and error here to understand how your visitors are working and interacting with the bots. So, for example, we have another automotive client that we tried this approach with, and it didn't work for them at all. what is performing better on their VDP page is a streamlined approach with only 4 options. Again, sort of more strong call to action focus about getting people to book a test drive and things like that. That works for them. So there's a few differences there.
I think that's probably a really good point. And we were talking about this yesterday, weren't we? Like, is it a kind of one size fits all approach? And the answer is not really. Like, there's some principles that are similar, but it's more about like testing out ones. And when me and Gavin were talking yesterday, I don't know if you want to just switch over to me for a minute. Actually,
yeah, of course.
Just so I'm not a voice from
exactly.
Is that, what are those consistent approaches? How can you use those if it's not always the same? And like we said, well, when we launch your bots, we probably take what we think is our, best starting use case. So maybe it is the FAQs, but then we find out they're not working. And we realize there's probably like some buckets of ways that we work, or some typical ways. So maybe it is FAQ based, maybe it is problem versus solution based, or it could just be simple CTAs. So those are 3 easy approaches that you can try and switch between. And it doesn't matter really what industry you're in, those can still be relevant. So FAQs they'll be relevant to your business. And like problem, that could be, like in the example, I think with the chatbot is like, I need a family car. That's their problem. They're trying to find something that matches the needs of their family. Whereas if you're a SaaS business or a product or service-based business, it might be something a little bit more business-like. I need to improve efficiencies. I have problems with X. And these are the things that we can use to not just elicit the engagement, but give a valuable interaction. And that's what sort of nudges them down the funnel to get them to that conversion at the end of the day. So if you have ones that you're not sure how to optimize, and especially if you haven't got any meetings coming up with your account manager or your technical account manager, then, put the question out to us. We're happy to kind of suggest some things that you could try. And hopefully over time, then it just becomes, part of the marketing mix that you've got, and you'll just find those strategies that make sense and test and try and improve. I think, like anyone would say, the most important thing is just kind of get stuck in and try it. If it works, great. That's why you can do the compare bots. That's why you can do A/B testing, so you can work it out rather than kind of sticking with one version of it and keep trying new things.
Yeah, that's a great point to finish on, is that, the trying the new things, because what we see from once they come out of onboarding and our clients come into, being full clients and working with us, whoever gets the most out of it is definitely the people who are more keen to try things and do a bit of testing, do some A/B testing, because, and no slight to onboarding or the initial bots, it's very rare that the bots that they start with will be what they end with in a year's time, just because maybe their traffic has changed, maybe their sort of ICP has changed, or maybe who they're going after, maybe their products have changed. There's a lot of sort of variables in that. And as I said, like, whoever gets the most out of it is definitely people who are keen to try these things. And it doesn't have to be massive overhauls. It can be something simple like, male versus female, robot versus human, color changes, a few different starting options, less fields in the forms. It can be quite simple changes. And they're now, with the new bot insights, it's definitely a lot easier to sort of understand if it's worked or not. So yeah, that's really just, I wanted to just cap it with that. But I don't think we need to go back into the platform now. I think we've seen enough from that, hopefully. But if there's any questions or any specific use cases, I guess we've got a few minutes for those. And thanks for sharing those links in the chat. I'll send through an email with the slides later on in the week anyway. So you'll have those. But yeah, the links are in there if you need them.
One thing we didn't mention actually is that, of course, we've got this webinar and we've given you an overview of the bot insights, the conversation insights, and some tips. But you will notice, if you haven't clicked on it before, there's usually a little kind of tab either in the right-hand side or the left-hand side in the platform. And these are page specific. So if you are on Bot Insights page. It's a little bit out of date, so we need to record a new one, but there is a lovely, I think, 5-minute video from Gavin, which walks you through that section. So if you've forgotten everything from this and you don't want to obviously watch through a whole 45 minutes, that's a really good kind of quick video to understand it. And we have those on as many sections as possible in the platform. So do make use of it. Find the articles and videos and to help you use it more. Obviously, it's our job to make sure that you do that, but we really think it's going to help. So hopefully you'll give it a try.
Cool. I think we can probably wrap it up from here then. I don't think we have any questions for today. So either it was super clear or super confusing.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. And as always, you can find all our webinars with the QR code there on the website. And just look out for our next newsletter. We always put the upcoming webinar in there, but we are likely to take a break for some of summer. So, but we will see you on the other side of it.
Great. All the best.
Thanks.